Today we are going to look at how to solve radical equations. Now last week we looked at how to add them, subtract them, multiply them, and simplify them. And now we're going to look at the last thing about how to solve them. The one-step ones are actually kind of easy. Now, do you all remember that to get rid of a radical you have to multiply it by itself? Like the radical of 4 times the radical of 4 would be the radical of 16, and that's a perfect square, which would be 4. All right, so is there another way I can write the square root of 4 times the square root of 4? Could I condense it like this? Be the square root of 4 squared equals 16, which equals 4. All right, so this is the premise we're going to use today, is we're going to square our radicals to get rid of them. But because it's an equation, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So for the first one, I got to get rid of the radical sign, so I'm going to square the x, which means whatever I do to one side, I got to do the other side, so I'm going to square the 1. So I'm going to get x is equal to, and 1 squared is 1. Again, the square root of x times the square root of x is going to be x squared, which is going to be x. All right, the second one, I'm going to square root the left, and I'm going to square root, square it. I'm going to square the left, and I'm just going to square the right. So when I square the radical of p over 3, I'm going to end up with p over 3, and 2 squared is 4. Now, how do you solve for p? Well, you just multiply these two together. So p is equal to 12. And again, the way you can check these is go back and put the number in place of the p. What's 12 divided by 3? 4. Is the square root of 4 2? Yes. Put the 1 here. 1. Square root of 1. Is the square root of 1 equal to 1? Yes. All right. So how am I going to approach this one? What am I going to do? I'm going to square the left side, and I'm going to square the right side. So when I square the radical of 2x, I'm going to end up with 2x. Basically, just pull out what's right underneath the radical sign. And then 4 squared is 16. So then, to solve for x, I divide by 2, and x is equal to 8. And again, if you want to check it, plug it in. 2 times 8 is 16. The square root of 16 is 4. So same here. I'm going to square that side. I'm going to square that side. When you square it, you're basically just pulling out the radicand, and 3 squared is 9. Then I divide by 9, and n is equal to 1. Okay, those are all one step. Those are pretty easy. Let's look at ones that have multi-steps. All right, so the whole idea is just like the last ones. You had the radical on one side by itself one side of the equal side by itself. So what we have to do is just like solving equations, you've got to get the square root of b minus 3 completely by itself. So we have a negative 1 on the same side. So how do we get rid of the negative 1? Well, you have to do the opposite. So you're going to add 1 to this side, which means you add 1 to that side. And that way that cancels out. 4 plus 1 is 5. So 5 equals the radical of b over 3. Then from there, to get rid of the radical sign, you square it. So if I square this side, I have to square that side. So you end up with 5 squared is 25. And again, you just bring the radicand out. Now, to solve for b, again, you can just cross multiply, or you can just multiply each side by 3, which ends up with b is equal to 75. Okay? All right, look at the next one. What do you notice about this one? What happens when you have a number outside or next to a radical sign? What operation is that? Well, that's multiplication. So how do you undo multiplication? You divide. I've got to get rid of the 4 first. So I'm going to divide each side by 4. Okay, that way those 4's cancel out. 32 divided by 4 is 8. And then I'm left with negative 4 minus 17x underneath the radical sign. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to square each side. Square this side, square that side. So I get 64 equals, and again, just bring this down. Negative 4 minus 17x. Now you get a two-step equation. How do you solve this two-step equation? Well, I'm going to add 4 to each side. I'm going to add 4 to each side. So I'm going to get 68 equals negative 17x. Then I'm going to divide by negative 17. And what is a positive divided by a negative? Sorry, it's late at night and I can't put my light in my kitchen on because it glares. 4. So x is going to be negative 4. Okay? All right. Let's look at another one. All right, what about that one? What am I going to do first? Yes, I'm going to subtract 2. So I'm going to subtract 2 from each side. 8 minus 2 is 6. So 6 equals the radical of n plus 4. Then what I need to do is I need to square this side and square that side. So I get 36 is equal to n plus 4. And then how do you solve for n? You just subtract 4. So 36 minus 4 is 32. So 32 equals n. All right, now, what happens if both sides are radicals? What do you think? Yep, you just square both sides. These are easy. So I'm going to square this side, and I'm going to square this side. And what does that mean? I just pull the radicand out. So this is 3 minus x equals negative 3 minus 2x. And then you solve for x. I am going to move the smaller x because I don't like to deal with negatives. So I'm going to have 3 plus x. Oops! Miss Evans. I don't have y'all yelling at me. What'd I do wrong? I brought it down wrong. So let's try this again. So I'm going to add 2x to each side. So I'm going to have 3 plus x equals negative 3. And then I'm going to subtract 3 from each side, and I get x is equal to negative 6. Okay? All right, let's do another one. Ooh, easy peasy. All we got to do is square each side. Give the camera a second to focus. All right, so I square this side. I square that side. I pull out 12 minus x. I pull out 2x minus 6. Now what? Okay, I'm going to add x to each side. So I'm going to get 12 equals 3x minus 6. Then I'm going to add 6 to each side. I get 18 equals 3x. Then I divide by 3, and x is equal to 6. Okay, and the last one. Oop, you can't tell that because that is a b over 4. Okay, b over 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to square each side. So I'm going to square this side, I'm going to square that side. I have 2b minus 7 equals b over 4. All right, one side's a fraction, one side's not a fraction. So I'm going to turn this into a fraction and put it over 1. And guess what? I'm just going to multiply. Oh, I could do that. Cross multiply. I think I'll just multiply by 4. That'll be easier. So I'm going to multiply this side by 4. And then I'm going to multiply this side by 4. Those cancel out, but because there's two things here, I need to put that inside parentheses. So then I'm going to do distributive. So I have 8b minus 28 equals what's left is b. So then I'm going to subtract 8b from each side. I'll bring this over here. I have negative 28 equals negative 7b. And then I divide by negative 7, and b is equal to 4. Okay? I think that should do it for you. You guys, if you need anything, just email me. Everything is up on Verge and Remind and my website. I miss you guys, and I'll see you on Friday in the Zoom meeting.